Hey there, good people. I had a question be thrown at me on Facebook, and it was about clearing spaces. What does that mean? And I understand immediately some of you are like, oh, here we go. Here comes the new age bullshit about clearing spaces, and what does that actually mean? So that's fine. I totally used to be in the same bandwagon pretty much about what that means in real time, to clear a space, to essentially clear something when we move into it. So if we move into a new office, a new bedroom, a new house, doesn't matter what our living situation is or our work situation. The idea is that you want to clear a space when you move into it. Now, sometimes in certain homes, bad things have happened, and it's not always murder or something god awful like that, but sometimes it's just been a lot of fighting or a lot of negativity. So when people talk about clearing spaces, and I get the eye roll, like, oh God, here we go, like clearing a space, like what does that actually mean? I like to always look at things in the opposite extreme and something that people can relate to so that they have a buy-in factor, right? They have a reason that they can go, okay, maybe this isn't total bullshit and maybe there's actually something to this. So I always say if you want to clear a space, right, you want to like wipe it out, essentially, like hit the reset button and get everything out. The question I always pose to people is, why do we create spaces? Why is it when someone passes that we bring out flowers, we put their picture out to remember them, that we light candles, that we do these ritualistic things in the event of, say, someone passing? Why do we do that? Why do we actually create space? And scientifically, you could say there's no real scientific merit, right, measurable on paper, to that process. But if you talk to anyone who's lost somebody, those rituals and those procedures that we go through are very relevant. They make people feel considerably better, and they have an impact on our mental and emotional state, how we live, how we navigate, how we discourse with people, in relationships, business dealings. There's lots of things that come from those processes. So I always like to phrase it in that context. Why do we create space? And if you can kind of get your head around that, then it gives you a little bit of buy-in factor as to why we might want to clear a space or reset it or destruct a space, which is what clearing is. We want to destruct what's there so that we can invite the good things back in. So when we talk about this, this is my protocol, okay? It's 4 things, 4 primary points, which are socializing, salt, sound, and scent. So I'll say this again: socializing, salt, sound, and scent. And I'm going to break those down, obviously, right now and tell you what that means. So the first thing is when you come into, let's say, a home, because this is usually where it's most relevant. We move into a new house, and there have been tenants there before. The first thing you want to do is to socialize, which what that means is throw a housewarming party. Actually have people come over that you like and love, that are talking, laughing, celebrating, having a great time, maybe spilling a few drinks, whatever it is, but that needs to happen first. So when we bring people into our home and we have a party and we do some kind of social event, it breaks up the stasis, okay, the space. If you subscribe, well, the Chinese subscribe to this, as do a lot of world traditions, that when, let's put this in a context that you can relate to. When we think about in the real estate world, this is a morbid thought, but this is, again, an extreme which people can relate to. If someone has been, say, unfortunately murdered in a home, or there's something like that has taken place in a home, real estate agents have to disclose it by law. And the reason for that is because a lot of people say, I'm not moving into a house where that's happened. No way. Like, I'm so not doing that. And the question is why? Like, why do people instinctively say, nope, I don't want to? There's no scientific thing. I know people who are atheists, who don't believe in, a higher power of any kind, and they say, no way, I'm not doing that. So again, when you think of it in these kind of extremes, why do we instinctively pull back from these things? And I think it's because we instinctively know that activities, actions, and things that take place leave an echo, a memory, a residual energy, if you want to call it that. Whatever works for you, whatever helps you get your mind around that, that's the basic idea. And a lot of these world traditions talk about that. They're very explicit about it. So socializing is one of the ways that we foster life and movement into a space. And it fundamentally helps us reframe how we feel about a space. So when we move into a new place, it's foreign. We don't know it. It's like, oof, this is new stuff. It's new walls. It's new scents, new spaces, new things for me to plug into. And immediately you give yourself a leg up in the power dynamic between this structure and yourself when you invite people into it and they're laughing, people that you know. Now it has become yours way more. And you have positive associative memories. You know, you got a buddy who's, spills something in the kitchen and the dog gets into it and makes a mess and it's a funny story. Every time you walk back into the kitchen, you're going to think about that in the coming weeks. So you want the positive, good vibes happening during a housewarming party. That's one. So that's socializing. Okay. The second one is salt. Salt is traditionally used as a substance that will essentially absorb the juju, absorb the gunk out of the ether, the air, and the space and environments. So the way you can think about this in the body, if you eat a lot of salt, excessively so, say you just take in, a couple tablespoons of salt, you will retain quite a bit of water because what salt does is it sucks in, it retains, it holds. So Chinese medicine and these other world traditions talk about this very basic idea. As above, so below. The micro, what happens in the micro happens in the macro. And it's not necessarily just because it's in water. They think that these minerals, things like salt, actually have a behavior in water, in air, in relation to other herbs. Like they're not just active in say water if we're using salt. So the idea is if you put a bowl of salt, okay, into the center of a room, the idea is that salt is slowly over the course of 24 to 48 hours, whatever feels right to you, is slowly going to absorb that ether. Whatever's in the space, whatever has an echo in there is slowly going to be gravitating towards that salt because salt draws in. So this is one of the ways that you can use salt. Use Morton's table salt for this. You don't need high quality salt. And just as a quick side note, don't eat Morton's table salt. It's half a molecule off from glass. It's bad. It's just a bad food. It's a bullshit food. Don't eat it. So it's great for cleansing, but don't eat it. Use Himalayan salt or lava rock salts or something like that. So salt is the next one. Then we've got, socializing, salt, sound. Okay, so the party aspect of this definitely does it. Typically there's music and laughter and all these things happening, but sound is one of the ways that we break up or clear a space as well. And the way you can think about it is this. Life is movement. Chinese medicine says this. It's one of the phrases from the text that says life is movement. So if we think about the pumping of our heart, the movement of our breath, the circulation of our blood, the movement of galaxies, anything that is living or that has life force or anima of some kind is moving. The only time things stop moving is in death, like true stasis, rigor mortis, right? When the body gets stiff and cold and is no longer moving, then we're looking at death. So things that are aligned with stillness and complete stasis are aligned with death, and that's not necessarily good. We don't want that. So sound is vibration. Fundamentally, that's what sound is. It's just vibration, and vibration is movement. So you can equate life and sound as one and the same thing, or at least they're related. You can think of it like that. So when we look at these mind-body practices, people chanting and trying to resonate different chambers of the body, trying to move the fascial tissues around the glands, which is a big piece of how and why chanting works. When we do that, when we have sound in an environment, this helps clear the space because it's aligned with light and vibration, or life and vibration. So my personal go-to, right, is I have a crystal singing bowl. I got when I was 22. It's a big, awesome crystal singing bowl. It just gives off one tone, saturates the space, and will bounce off of everything. That's like, for my field, like that's one of my tools. Like I really use it and I love the sound and they sound amazing. But if you don't have that, most people don't have just a crystal bowl laying around or one of those even brass Tibetan bowls. If you don't have that, one of the ways you can do this in the modern context is take a Bluetooth speaker, set it up into a room, and put on one of your favorite albums, whatever it is, Coldplay, the Rolling Stones, whatever your thing is, Dr. Dre, I don't really care. Whatever your thing is, though, you're going to play that on full volume, not full, don't blow your speaker, but like loud. Leave it in the center of a room, close the door, and let that sound just saturate that room for an hour or two. And then you do that with every room. You go from room to room, the living room, the kitchen, and you let that sound just permeate. And that's one of the ways that you break up stasis. And then the last one is scent. So people have probably heard in the New Age scene, people have heard like, white sage, they're smudging and they're clearing out spaces. White sage is classically and traditionally one of the cleansing scents. all of the plants and herbs in various world traditions have different properties inside the body and out. Some are more cleansing and more purgative and more detoxifying. Some are more nourishing and replenishing to the body. So we don't have to get into all of that right now, but just as a frame of reference, okay, there's two primary ones that I guide people to. The first one is white sage. Okay, it's easy to get. You can get it at most, New Age crystal bookstores. You can get it online. It's very simple, very easy. The next one is Palo Santo. Palo Santo is my personal go-to because white sage gives me a headache, but there's a huge ethical debate right now about Palo Santo and a lot of these sacred plants and herbs and barks, and because they're being unethically harvested. I get that. I hear that. I personally still own a lot of Palo Santo, and it's something to consider in the larger context. So I'm going to leave that with you to make that political decision, but just want to put it on your radar. So when we think about scent, the important thing is, and typically in the West, what is lost is typically there's a cleansing or dispersing scent, and that's all we do in the West. And in all of the traditions, they talk about you want yin-yang polarity, which means as you disperse, that yang energy goes whoosh and wipes out the bad. You also need to have the yin, that which contracts and invites back in. So you need a cleansing scent and what you would call an inviting scent. So the two inviting scents that I suggest are sweetgrass, which is very easy to get. You can get it on Amazon. Sometimes it comes in a kind of like roped braided version into like a circular pattern. It's really cool looking. You can burn that. Sweetgrass is great. It also comes in incense. A company called Juniper Ridge makes it. So that's one. The other one is frankincense resin. Now, frankincense resin is the sap from the boswellia tree, and you can put that on hot coals. That's the fancy way to do it. If you want to use frankincense essential oil through a diffuser, you can do that as well. But that's considerably more expensive, which is why I push people towards the frankincense resin, because that's a much better investment in the long run, and it's considerably cheaper. A bag is like $8 to $12 for a pound, when a little tiny, if you go through one of those MLM companies like Young Living or doTERRA, it's like $70 to $100 for an essential oil this big, which is a ripoff in my mind. But that's a whole separate topic. So you want the scent, right? So again, socializing, salt, sound, and scent. These are the four pillars that you want to use to clear a space. And the last piece to this, the one that I really stress that's really important and that you need to think about, is the nature of intention. So the importance of ritual and doing these things, again, we have to go back to this idea. Why do we have celebrations of life? Why do we have funerals when people pass? Why do we do these rituals? To have closure with something. If you can get your mind around that basic idea, this gives you the buy-in factor as to why you might want to have a ritual about clearing a space when moving into it. You want to hit the reset button, but your intent needs to be there. That's a really pivotal point in all of these traditions and all of these medicine traditions, is they talk about the nature of intention. Now, the New Age scene will talk about manifestation. You can say that in positive Tony Robbins terms, whatever works for you, but the takeaway is this. Typically where your intent goes, right? The focusing on positive emotion or negative emotion. It doesn't matter if you're talking to the guru monk on the mountaintop or you're talking to Jocko Willink, the ex-Navy SEAL guy, or David Goggins. They're talking about where you focus, your life current goes. It's pretty basic. It's not revolutionary. So when we do these processes and we clear a home or a space or an environment, your intent needs to be there. You need to be thinking about this. This isn't, if you just run through these four pillars and you're just screwing off in your head and you're not present for it and you're not actually having some measure of intent behind it, it doesn't work. It's just the way it is. It's like going to a celebration of life and watching, people falling on YouTube the whole time. Like, are you really going to get the medicine out of that celebration of life ceremony because you're totally distracted doing something else? It's no different with this kind of thing. So your intent needs to be there. You need to have a certain amount of passion and intensity present during the process. And that can be relaxed. That can be very simple and easy, but it's really important. So those are the go-tos. I facilitate these things for a number of people and clients. It's not a huge staple of my business, but people come to me and they've got questions and they want a space cleared, and because I have a background in it, I definitely do it. So if you guys have questions, feel free to hit me up in the comment section. If you guys have suggestions or input, put those in there too. I always like learning stuff. And that's pretty much it. So I hope this finds you guys well. Thanks.